mean, why am I afraid to not try? Like, I have no fear of the try, and I have zero fear of failing. I am not afraid of bankruptcy. I'm not afraid of living in my car. I'm not afraid of people looking at me saying, what a loser. Don't care.
The Sales Proformance Show.
Welcome back to the Sales Proformance Podcast Show, everybody. I am your host, Dave Slyman. And as always, we have inspiring entrepreneurs joining us. And I'm super excited today. This is a guy who's a true testament of adaptability, innovation, and growth. He's the CEO of Murphy Doors and Murphy Ladder Incorporated, but he started his career as a firefighter and paramedic and eventually leaped into the business world as an entrepreneur. He's created some unique products. He disrupted the ladder industry, and now he's disrupting the door industry with more functional, stylish, and unique doors that really represent well. So we're going to talk about his journey from top to bottom and going from being a public service on the front of public service to now being involved in two super innovative companies that are kicking ass and growing by leaps and bounds. He's been in Inc. magazine's list of top 5,000 fastest growing companies in the country. So without further ado, I want to welcome Jeremy Barker. Jeremy, thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, man, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah,
Appreciate it a lot.
absolutely. So, listen, you started your career as a firefighter and paramedic, and then can you tell us about the transition and what inspired you to move into the world of entrepreneurship and starting your companies?
Well, it's pretty basic, and I think we all have that same one. It's called money, right?
Yeah.
Like firefighter, paramedic, as much as the career is amazing and exciting, it just doesn't pay enough to really kind of sustain the kind of lifestyle you kind of dream of as a kid, so that was really the push. And when I got my first paycheck, I started in the fire world at 18, and it was $6.13 an hour. And I'm like, well, crap, that ain't going to pay much. You know what I mean? So how do I even buy a car? And I'd left a freight company. I was working for a local UW freight, and that was paying $7.50. I'm like, hold on a second. I just went to fire, which should be a much better career, at least in my heart. And I lost $1.37 an hour. I'm like, I can't, that's what, 20% at that rate.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I kind of played with that for a little bit and then I thought, well, I better go to school if I'm going to make any money. Went to the University of Utah for a little while and broke off into a shed, building sheds for the neighbors, and saw a little creak in the door, let's say, of an opportunity to be able to create a business out of with no business experience and no discipline to money. But fortunately enough, created a metal frame for the inside of shed doors that was picked up by all the Home Depots. So at 18 years old, I ended up getting in, almost 19, I guess, get into Home Depot and started selling doors in that big box retail market.
Wow. So you hit early. And listen, I want to back up on this, right? Because, and you can touch on this as well. I think so many times there are people who want to do things or have a vision or an idea, and they just don't really make the leap. And what you did, especially at you were 18 and you made that leap to just go into business for yourself. I give you a lot of credit. I think there's a lot of people out there who almost get paralysis by analysis, or it has to just be perfect, right? And sometimes you just got to do it. You just got to jump in. And
I think there's two different schools of thought there, right? So I had a really unique upbringing. My mom's always been self-employed. She did hair, and then she created some dolls. My dad was a VP at E.F. Hutton, then Piper Jaffray and Hopwood. Yeah. So I saw the world of like high finance and money and having a job. And then my mom, to be honest with you, of course, she's entrepreneurial. So she worked way more, way harder with way less income at the time, doing what she was doing. But I did notice that she had more stability. It seemed like my dad was changing from brokerage for Merrill Lynch and Piper Jaffray and E.F. Hutton and all that crap. But anyhow, so I had the entrepreneurial idea from my mother, and then I saw high finance from my father, thinking, oh, I would never want to do blue collar work because that you get dirty and you're cold. Never was in my mind. But at the same time, the idea of when the market crashed in 87, my dad's high finance world went to zero.
Yeah.
And then he was living on the couch for years while we were going through some mediation and all some other stuff. Of course, I was young, so I can't really remember, but 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And then I saw my mom just kind of muscle through it, and she has a no quit. And she's a little 5'2" French lady that's full of piss and vinegar. She'll say she loves you with a mean comment of some type, like you're a wonderful person, but crap, your hair looks like garbage.
Right.
So that's her way of saying, you know what, you're a really good looking dude, but if you comb your hair the other direction, you'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had this awesome opportunity to see these two dynamics, and it was really hard to digest what you're seeing when you're younger, of course.
Yeah.
But as you get older and you think, why am I not afraid of failure? Why am I afraid why am I afraid to not try? Like, I have no fear of the try, and I have zero fear of failing. I am not afraid of bankruptcy. I'm not afraid of living in my car. I'm not afraid of people looking at me saying, what a loser. Don't care.
Yeah, man.
Used to, however, right? There is a period like, what is the neighbor in the world going to think of me if I take a chance and I lose? Well, that's pretty heavy to some. Fortunately, I did lose, and we talked about that the first time I met you, but
Yeah.
I went bankrupt early too. We had tons of money. We made tons of profits, but I partied crazy. And
I want to talk about that because you hit it real big early, right? You're making a shit ton of money. Or I mean,
20 million before 22 years old.
That's unbelievable. Right. Okay. So talk about that a little bit. I want to back into that. Yeah. And then come forward. No, this is great. This is why we do it, because I recognize things, and I want to unpack this a little bit.
So anyhow, what happened, I'd going to school. I built a little shed. They said, hey, the neighbor goes, man, I had to go down to Tough Shed. There was 3 Tough Sheds at the time to kind of get an idea of how to build a shed. And I noticed every one of their shed doors were warped, and they used a 2x4 as the support mechanism to make the frame or the shed door stay flat, kind of. Every 2x4, unless it's nailed to a top and bottom plate, it's going to twist, right? It's just wood. It's going to do what it does, and that's twist.
That's it.
So I'm like, well, if we did a metal frame on the inside of these doors, they'd never twist because they're stronger steel stronger than wood, and I can screw the sheeting right to the metal and it'll hold straight forever.
Yeah.
Well, I took that, went to the state fair, and keep in mind, I am going to the U. I did just plus 60,000 in the 10 days of the state fair. I'm like, holy crap, I don't need to go to school to make 60,000 a year. I just did it in 10 days. This is something I need to look into further, and maybe I'll just start a business. Well, my brilliancy, because I was 18 years old, I decided, hey, I've got $32,000 down. I'm just going to go buy a brand new Dodge Diesel because they're $35,000. So that's brilliant. I mean, might as well look awesome at 18 while I start a business that looks successful with my brand new truck, and that was the out the gate game, and perfect example of discipline, financial discipline. But needless to say, finance did, and I get in and I start pushing. Well, never did any marketing, never did any kind of, other than the state fair, which, by the way, came from my mother also doing trade shows, selling her porcelain dolls. So she's done shows. I'm like, well, I could do the fair too and sell some sheds, and it worked. Well, as I put this together, then winter hits because fair's in the fall. I made 60 grand. Then all of a sudden it went into nothing. So this brilliant idea of business was short-lived.
Wow. Yep.
And I had a bunch of leads, but at the same time, I went into Home Depot a ton to buy that material. And by the way, at 18 years old, growing up in Centerville, Utah, Home Depot was only 21st South and 3rd West in my heart. Right there, Home Depot's just like the local grocery store. There's just a one store thing. Pretty naive. And so I had had the opportunity to meet a guy named Rick Vasquez that was a regional buyer back at the time. And he said, hey, what are you doing with all this T111? Well, you ought to do some sheds for us. And so that gave me an opportunity to go more into, start the conversations with Home Depot, but gave me a little bit of breath. Like, we can get through the winter, and I don't have bills per se, other than my $700 truck payment or whatever it was.
Right.
I can get through the next 3 months. And then it started to pick up. Well, then at that point, I'm like, I got to get a thing in the yellow pages, and then I'm going to do flyers, and I'm going to do door to door. Like, go hand out a bunch of mailers. Like, how do I do it? Really guerrilla level, and it blew up, right? It all of a sudden went from one little, 60,000 to that, to a month, to that, to a week, to like, what do you do? And honestly, when Home Depot first signed with me, he's like, oh, here's the X amount of stores we want in the Southwest region. And I'm like, dude, it's just me and Troy in my mom's driveway. So don't know what you're thinking, but I thought you guys were Home Depot. And by the way, there's no way I'm going to afford to be able to put those displays in all your stores. The wall mounted displays that you used to see in the hardware
Yeah.
stores, like face and house shaped face, gable style or gambrel truss. So that's dumb. And by the way, you can't look at my metal frame door hanging on a wall, so you might as well do it down out by the lawn and garden. So we convinced Home Depot to put the lawn and garden, the sheds out in the lawn and garden department outside full, and then they bought my displays. So there was a few little nuances in the middle that people don't realize how. I mean, Home Depot's a powerhouse, right?
Huge.
They have been forever. They're 152 billion, I think, this year, and at the time they were sub 500 stores. But we look at these big box stores as the end goal, as the objective. Like if I could get my products into Home Depot, I'm going to be a millionaire overnight. But what they don't realize is if you're not good at it, you'll be losing millions overnight.
Yes.
Right? They are just such good buyers, and they're so good at what they do that you can get your butt handed to you in a quick hurry.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I had a little bit of a guardian angel, which was Casey Erickson, that was the president and founder of Orbit Irrigation Products, as my neighbor. I mean, not very many people can say they have a big, huge neighbor that supplies Depot, right? So he helped do the guardrails for Depot so I don't get my butt handed to me in losses. And the irony and kind of the point of the story is all these companies like Amazon, like Wayfair, like Home Depot, Lowe's, these things that we look up to as manufacturers or product, conceptual idea makers. These guys don't have an opportunity to think out of the box. Most of them. That's why they work for Home Depot, right?
Yes.
So if you can create ideas and create something that's outside the box and have it become their idea, then you can get through it. And the first lesson I had was
a really good point.
They just can't. They're not paid to think out of the box. They're paid to buy from you as cheap as you can and then try to milk you down further ever so much to where your product's a piece of crap, right?
Yeah.
Well, what taught me first is wait a second. I took Home Depot, the largest home improvement center on the planet, and convinced them that their wall display model of their sheds was dumb. That we now, no matter where you go, Eagle, or you used to be Eagle, but Lowe's and Home Depot, their sheds are outside. And I can tell you it started from an 18-year-old with no money and a metal frame door that's sitting on that you can't look at. And I find the irony in that where even at 18, with the right presentation and just to have them understand what they're missing by something so small can change the dynamic of what's now 30 years later, right? That was 1993. 30 years later, it's still doing the same thing. And it's funny, every time I walk into a Home Depot store and see the sheds all over the parking lot now, I'm like, how funny that is. That was such a bad idea. Now they have 20 sheds in the parking lot. So
don't sell them what they want, sell them what they need. That's the whole idea. And I think too many people go into business trying to take the square peg and push it into a round hole sometimes, especially, and I've told you this, I do a lot with sales execution plans and sales framework. And realistically, they're taking that square peg, trying to push it in a round hole versus trying to understand or look outside the box and provide solutions to things. And I think that's a great point. So you take off at that point, right? I mean, big deal, huge, right?
Yep.
And your
cash starts coming in, and I have way more friends than I can count. Right? It's crazy. And then I'm like, hey, look, I'm 21. I'm going to party, and I'm going to go bring every guy and girl wherever we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing you know, winter hits, literal winter hits. And then, your bills are doing 30. Well, it becomes 90 while there's still snow on the ground before you know it. And when you outspend your income, quickly the music stops and the lumber yards shut you down and everybody starts to get nervous. Every reason to be nervous. And then I decided I needed to get rid of Arizona. Like I need to scale back a little bit and find a partner and sell a franchise, which I had no idea on franchise law. And I broke every one of them. Right. So I didn't know I was supposed to be legally doing whatever. I'm like, you can have Arizona do this. And in trust and in the type of area that we were born and raised, it's like very religious based, and he was a religious leader. And so I took his position in the leadership of the church locally. And I thought, hey, well, I can trust him. Well, there's things, in God we trust, all others pay cash, or we use heavy attorneys to protect ourselves. But so that lesson was quickly learned. And then I ended up living in my car for a year. Right. So I went around the world.
How old are you at this point? 23, 24?
22, almost 23. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was an experience. Like It was a really embarrassing thing. This is where most people are afraid of failure. And I was in the same boat. I was that guy that couldn't face the neighbors, the ones I was taking party. And by the way, they all disappear. Well, you don't have money, you don't
Right.
fans, right?
Money's gone. They're gone. They're gone.
That depth is not anywhere. So they're like, oh, that guy can't take me to Puerto Penasco or New York for, New Year's Eve. Like, I'm going somewhere else. But really interesting changes in the way people perceive you. But most of that stuff, people don't give two craps about you, really, not in a negative or positive way. They have their own problems. And we think that their whole world revolves around their opinion of us. Like, not just our world, but their world is all about how poorly we performed. Truly, when you're not in their face, they're not even thinking about you.
Yeah.
So who cares, right? But we put a lot of weight in those empty places where we think we are so important to everyone else, and we're just not. And once we own the lack of, as soon as we can get the discipline of like, I don't truly care what others think of me. I care what I think of me first, what my family thinks of me second, and my kids, you know what I mean? And then on down the line.
Exactly.
It needs to be me first, right?
Yeah,
and not selfishly,
Yep.
right? But we have to stay confident and secure and honest and moral. Do it this way, and it'll go down in the proper way. But I wanted to kind of two steps back where you said square peg in a round hole and trying to get people what they want. What you see a lot of people trying to perform in business right now, and why I find the disruptive markets that we talked about the other day so appealing, is you see more and more people want to mimic. And everybody's trying to take the same thing that's already out there and make it just a little bit better. But their idea of better is cheaper. So there's only two ways to get cheaper. One is you buy better, two, or you degrade the product, which then creates garbage product. And then you're going to go ship it overseas. That degrades the product further. You have Depot and everybody else telling you it needs to go cheaper. So they thinner plastic, thinner metal, thinner this, less this, no warranty. And the next thing you know, you're buying garbage and prices go up, right? Yes. Home Depot just tries to scale it. So my thought process is slightly different. It's like, what is it, to your point, get them what they need? What is it that is simple as a ladder? What do we not like about a ladder? What could we do different in a door? What can we do different in beds? What can we do different in rooms? What can we do different in software that isn't just trying to take theirs and do a 5% twist or a 20% twist to get around their patent? Like, let's think way outside the box. And then here's the beautiful thing, Dave, that people miss is if we are the only ones doing it, where is the price benchmark set? Oh, that's right. Wherever we decide, because there's no benchmark to be compared to. So if we can enter a market and say, this is the price, why? Who do you want to substantiate that value to? I'm like, to me. Why? Because there's no one else to validate it with. Well, I feel it's too pricey. I'm like, well, I feel like you don't have the vision and you're missing the value proposition. Absolutely. And so now we talk value, not comparisons.
Love it.
Where
We're
is innovation created? It's created in monopolization. And I know people hate the idea of monopoly, but if you're the only one with the only patent, with the only product that does X, Y, Z, you are monopolizing the marketplace for that product, not by buying everybody else and setting a price, but by having the one and only X, right? Where does marketplaces get degraded? Well, it's in cannibalization. And cannibalization occurs when we try to knock off everybody else's crap.
It's the truth, man.
You know?
And here's what it comes back to, and it's what you started this conversation with. Now, anybody out there who's starting a business, currently running a business, or wants to elevate their business to the next level, here are the a few things that I want you to hinge on that Jeremy talked about. Okay, one, integrity. Okay, and this goes over personally and professionally. If you're putting a business together, you're running a business, you have to look at these 5 things. 1, integrity. 2, failure. I don't. If I fail, I'm with you, man. If I fail, I'm gonna kick ass trying. Yeah. But and most of the times, I always say, if you don't learn something from it, it's a failure. That's a true failure. If you don't learn something from it, when we fail forward, right? We learn something from this. Also, is respect. You've got to have respect for your organization, the people, and the prospects and the people you have in front of you. Consistency. Like you said, you're going to level this thing up, or you're going to be consistent. And then also just lean on your team. Lean on your people. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. Lean on your people. And I think if you live by those 5 principles, running personally or professionally, you're going to go a long way. And I think you nailed half of these just in a short conversation.
You know what's awesome is you could take those 5 pieces and encapsulate it, starting with failure. So what I tell my team is fail fast and fail frequent. Right? I want you to not look at your wins every day. Those are going to be captured. We're going to high five and celebrate your wins. But at the same time, we should be celebrating being able to identify the fail as soon as possible. I would love to see as many failures as frequently as possible. Not because we're shooting for those, but we can capture them, fix them, and no longer discuss them or have that problem. And we celebrate that piece. What does that do to your team if they know they can fail and they're looking at finding the failure and looking at and doing it as fast as they can? I mean, this is terrible to say, but I look at Britney Spears. She won for 20 years, right? And she never failed. And then the first time she fumbles, she goes from a beautiful, good singer to a butched, crazy person. And it's like, because that was her fail and she didn't know how to fail. But what if we can teach our team that by failing fast and failing frequent, we don't have a cliff to fall off of. We have an 8-inch step that anybody can heal from that same day. We just twisted our ankle. We didn't break our leg or die because the cliff was so big because we missed that little failure and we let that product get so mature that by the time it's out there and we have 150,000, like our first order from Home Depot is like 105,000 units. Well, what if we didn't catch that failure and you have 105,000 units sitting out there? Well, that fail is devastating and it's a $15 million bill. But if we can see it in the progression, as we build the products, people are afraid to say, oh, no, this is not okay. But I don't want to tell the boss. I'm like, no, do it. This is awesome. Because now we don't have 105,000 of those out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love the philosophy, man. I just am so aligned with you on this. I think it's such a great philosophy, and you build trust, like you said, you build such a great trust in your organization, and your growth pattern is so much more aggressive, and it's just a great way to run things. So now, because I want to get into this too, I want to start talking about the first transformation, which was the ladder market that you got into. Okay.
So it started with doors and then ladders were second.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Okay. I thought it was doors. Okay. So let's talk about doors.
Doors. Right. Awesome.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. The door business was an interesting one. I'm a firefighter, paramedic at Royce City here in Weber County.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to finish my basement. It only took 11 years and it's not big. It's like 1,700 square feet. So I don't want you to think it's this crazy thing. It's firefighter wage basement, right? My theater room I was building has 5 seats. So when I say theater room, I don't want you to think I'm creating this beautiful gargantuan theater room. This is just a 5-seat theater room that's like 9 by 13. So it's not crazy, but I did put a little elevated floor for my kids, and it was at my level of affordability. But I wanted a cool ticket booth door, like a hidden door that the kids could take their ticket from their friend, and that was my thought process. I'm like, how do I find a door like that? And there, Pinterest or whatever at the time. This is 2012.
Okay.
I'm like, I want to build something. Who has them? No one. There's some cool images on Instagram, or not even Instagram, but on the internet of these kind of cool doors that you could find. But I tried to do it. I never built cabinets before ever. And we visit a little bit about E-Myth Revisited in the book and how important it is to not be too much of the operator, but more of the, visionary.
Grow it. Yep.
Long story short, I'm like, I'll build a box. And I used 3 hinges and they ripped the side off. And then I used a piano hinge and they ripped the side off. And I'm like, okay, how do I build a door that can hold 300 pounds of weight and not just fall apart? Well, I used the idea of like a backhoe bucket. And again, if I would have just bought some pivot hinges initially, the ones that were sold, I would have saved a ton of money. But I decided I better reinvent the wheel and come up with a concept to create my own pivot hinge because of my lack of tooling of having a more, routers and so forth. I needed to surface my
Well, it got you there though, right? The fail
got me there. And my business is like, you know what? This is something I can get back to big box. I will make hidden door hardware and sell it to Home Depot. That'll be a home run. Well, guess what? There wasn't a market for. Oh yeah, hidden doors. There's not even a freight code. There's no like section in the store for hidden doors. There is now in all of them, by the way, but we had to create it. And so again, you'd think, what is it going to take? And when I still had connections at Home Depot, I'm like, hey, you got this? And like, dude, you're cute. That's cool. It's going to be super niche, and we don't sell niche. Call Rockler or whatever. So we got Rockler to buy some hardware. In our first year in business, in 2012, we did $30,000.
Okay.
Which, by the way, is almost as much money as I made in fire. A little less, but I'm like, man, this is a great side gig.
Right.
making pretty good margin on these hinges. They were made in Utah, and he's shipping it to my customer. It was great, and really started a little ganky dink freaking website that was terrible and red and black, and it doesn't matter. Never knew how to build a website,
You're
but we
making
got
money. You're making money, man. I mean,
it was a good side job. I was making as much take home from that deal as I was in the fire side almost.
it's
But then I got more and more calls of like, look, I don't want the hinge. I just want a door.
Okay.
And I'm like, never build a door. So then my convenience again, this is life. This is luck, keeping your eyes open. But my cross the street neighbor was one of the large suppliers of CNC equipment for cabinet companies. And this is again 2013-ish. And the market was still soft post that little bit of a recession, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I've got some cabinet guys that would be willing to take any kind of side work. If you want to visit with them, they'll help you do it. So I went up to Rigby, Idaho, and met with Chris Merrill Cabinets up there. And he helped me come up with a door that could be, created and shipped whole. And we just put the hinges on and ship it to our customers. So in the meantime, I'm working with a couple different internet, website designers to build my cheesy website.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm working with Merrill Cabinets to come up with a selection of doors. Like here's this one, or this one, right? So they were starting at around $3,000 for a basic hinge or a basic door. And it kind of went out. The next year we did $150,000. I think it was like $142,000. And then the next year we did almost 500,000. And then the next year we did 1.7 million. And the next year I'm like, this is really starting to go.
And this is all organic too, right? I mean,
organic. I had no money. Remember, every penny that I do now. Here's an example when it comes to business that a lot of people think I'm going to start a company. I'm going all in. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do this. Yeah. Now, firefighters work 240 hours a month. So that's 80 hours more than the standard employee at 40 hours a week, right? We're working 6 weeks in your 4 weeks, like in comparable of time. So I'm thinking, well, look, I have insurance, I have retirement, I have a little check, but it's a check. So it's an aluminum safety blanket for me.
Yeah.
And I can take some risks as long as I don't dip into this because I learned how to get by on this wage. So I can do the rest, but I don't have any more to invest. So whatever I create organically can invest my next project. And we had good margins out the gate, right? We were lucky to have why? Because we are the monopoly. We set the price. We decide how it's supposed to work. And we do it this way. We had our customers pay 100% up front, and then we would ship their door in 4 to 6 weeks. And that's a hard deal to do, to convince you, Dave, to give me $3,000 up front, and it may show up or may not because we have no reviews, and it may be what you think you're going to want, but may not. So we had some hurdles there. And as it grew, I took every penny and invested back in. And my point being, I did not quit Roy Fire until I was trending $5 million for 12 months. Like, meaning I don't mean to be 5 million. So 400,000 a month. I needed to be on a forward look. Yeah. I need to hit 400,000 consecutively for 3 months. Then I would have the faith that I could move over to Murphy Door full time without stealing milk from my baby. So here's what I told my son. He wanted to go break out into his business, and he's like, I'm going to quit. I'm going all in. I said, well, hold on. What's your forecasted revenue? 250,000. What do you make? 125,000. Like, so you're going to have to still half the baby's milk. Like, you have a brand new baby, and you're going to take it and you're going to give it a little bit of bottle milk, and then you have to have half for you. Well, your baby's never going to grow if you're taking the first 5 years, 50% of the
everything out the top
milk.
Yep.
Right. So I made a commitment that I would never take money out for the first 5 years for myself. And I was going to work other jobs, extra hours, to ensure that my baby was healthy for 5 years, because that's the fail period, right? Yep. A 5-year first fail break point.
I want to jump in on something though, really quick, because there are people out there who have a job right now, and I'm all for side hustles, and I'm not calling what you had a side hustle, especially not $5 million a year. Okay. But
side hustle, though, it really was, to your point.
Yeah.
But I want you to know, when I say that, my wife almost left me. She came up and she said, you worked 590 hours this month.
That's what I wanted to get to. Like, how much
go ahead.
time were you putting in firefighting and building this successful business? I mean, that's the thing. Everybody's on TikTok and they're doing their thing, throwing their money around, but the real grind, like, I want you to speak to the hours in your lifestyle at that time when you were pushing through.
So from 2012 to 2016, when the rude awakening came in. My wife, I got home, I'd gone to fire department, and I was working at Layton City Fire and Royce City Fire, like part-time Layton, doing some stuff. And I was also traveling, trying to get Home Depot all finished up, and Rockler, these other different vendors we were supplying. So I flew a few, and then I also worked at the fire station. Well, I came home, I had my luggage. I was the short break before I go back on shift the next day for another rotation. And I walked in, my dog ran to me and kind of wagged his tail. My wife's mopping the floor. She has earbuds in. My daughter was playing with an iPad or something. Yeah. And not one person said hi. Not one, the dog. Right. And so I'm like, hey, well, hello, I'm here. Ta-da. Like, are we going to get a hello? So my wife took her ear pod out of her ear and she goes, you're expecting everybody to get excited because you're home. And I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, if you want to be a dad, then you should be one. But in the meantime, go ahead and make yourself comfortable, sleep here tonight, and you can go on your way. Where in the world is this coming from? What are you, this doesn't even make sense to me. And she goes, well, Jeremy, and she had been writing it down in her calendar, the hours that I was being gone. She goes, you've worked 590 hours this month. You have been gone at work, whether it be at the fire station, Murphy Door, or traveling, 590 hours. And she went back and she goes, and by the way, that's a light month. So here's the last month, here's the previous month. And she goes, I didn't sign up for this. And if this is what you want, you can have it. But I'm going to just go, do my thing.
Yeah.
Bless her heart. So I went to the fire station the next day. And the irony is my chief, a guy that I appreciate at home. Like, he's a great man at home, not my favorite fire chief. So stand-up dude, would love to have him help raise my kids, raised wonderful, amazing children. Can't stand him as a fire chief. Right. So I know that's a weird dynamic, but he is it's a great guy. I mean, I would trust him to raise my children, but he brought out this example that was like a shocking thing for me. He had this rock. We were out on the apron at the fire station, and he put a big rock on the driveway out in front of the station, and then a medium rock and a small rock. And I go, what? He goes, this is Jeremy's universe. And he goes, and this big rock is you and your family. And this medium rock is you and Murphy Door. And this little teeny rock is Royce City Fire and you. He goes, the problem is Royce City Fire is dictating your calendar. You have to be here on those shifts. And so that means that the family piece has to go the outside, because the next a little bit Murphy Door has to take, and then your family gets whatever's left over. And he goes, and if you try to drive down the road in this universe with the highest, heaviest weight on the outside, your universe is going to explode because you can't pivot around the small rock. And he goes, and if
great analogy.
Right. I honestly sat there. I'm like, he's exactly right. Like, Roy is deciding my calendar. And then I told him, I said, Jason, I've always told you that I would retire, or quit, I should say, when I hit 5 million trending. He goes, yeah, but you know what? You told me for the last couple of months, you're over 400,000. And I said, yeah. He goes, so you're just scared. I said, yeah, I'm scared because I've lived in my car. I've had this problem.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm just going to challenge you. You need to quit or you're going to lose your family. And Roy's not that important. And if you ever need to come back to the fire station, you can go get a job at a fire station whenever you want. Like, you've got a lot of experience. You've got degrees. You'll be fine. So I decided that day to resign. And then I did my 2 weeks and then went home and decided to go full-time Murphy Door.
Yeah.
And that was June of 2016. So Murphy Door was a side hustle, to your point, till June of 2016. So December of 2012 till June of 2016.
Yeah. And I think there's a point in all of this, right, where you just talked about it. You just know where it's that time to just make the jump and go all in, because again, you've accomplished some amazing things here. Okay. You're working as a firefighter. You're doing a business that's doing $500,000, almost a month.
5 million. Oh yeah. A month. Yeah. There you go.
Almost $500,000 a month. At 400,000.
Sure.
But there are people who work years and years and years and don't get to that point. So you make the leap, and I respect, my wife is the same way. When I'm out of balance, I tell her, and at first when this would happen, I would get a little defensive. I get defensive about it.
Me too.
But
I'm still that way.
It still can be sometimes, but now I really encourage it. If she feels like I'm being out of balance, because I love the grind. I love that. I love business. I just want to win. That's it. I want to win all the time. Right. And
it's not about money.
No,
I wish everybody understood. Yeah. It's like, when's enough for you? I'm like, I don't even know how much it is. What do we have? I don't even care. Like, but it's the challenge right along the way. I want to see that what people say you can't do, like, well, you're wrong again. And I've been wrong a lot, but great. I'm wrong a lot. But when I do have it right, I'm like, I want to wave I'm right though this time. This time I got it. 1 out of 100. We're in. So
So yeah, no, I love, my wife does that. There's times that it needed to be done. So I respect what your wife did there.
the other,
Um,
the other thing I wanted to
yeah,
add to that,
go ahead,
half a
please.
million, 400,000 a month. So you're doing 5 million a year. And I want to say, I only drew what I was being paid at the fire station in the same benefits, the same pay, the same everything. So my lifestyle didn't
Didn't
change.
change.
I didn't want to go and say, hey, I'm going to pay myself X because I'm making X. It's like, I'm going to stay disciplined because my vision of Murphy Door is not a $5 million a year company. It's a $100 million a year company or a $500 million a year company. And if I'm taking milk away at any of these break points, I use that analogy of milk, but if I'm starving it
Yeah.
because I want to live a different lifestyle and drive a fancy car, buy something different than $19 Wranglers, I won't be able to do that. I look at the investment of, I know that if I put $1,000 in X, it can pay me 10, 20, 30,000 on Y. So why would I want to go buy a Rolex, or why would I want to buy a Ferrari? Well, sure, can I? 100%. I can buy as many of those as I probably would desire, but I don't. Why? Do you know what I mean?
Like, we're going to clip that back. And what you just said there is so profound when it comes to the business world. Because once people start making money, they think, well, and you learned this early, though. You learned it as a hard lesson early, and you carried it with you. And it's a true discipline, what you're talking about. Because when people who may not have had money, or they have had money, and they start making money, they think that this, one thing I've learned is it will not be, you can always keep growing, but there are times where it can get real lean, and you got to be prepared for that.
Oh, there's
But
consistent.
you're talking about a true discipline, and I really would encourage people to listen back to what you just talked about, and I respect it. I really do. And I,
You know what they also
both
what it
sides
did,
of that.
Dave. Here's the other thing that I did, and I think this is kind of the negative side in a way. It's not to be negative vision, but when I looked at what I did when I bought all that stuff that had the look at me piece,
Yeah.
it attracted the wrong people around me that then accelerated my desire to keep doing it, to make sure everybody could pay attention to me. And then I realized, once I lived in my car for a year, how amazing it was to just be under the radar and no one look at me. And I like to be that secret little thing that's like, you know what? I look like a dumb guy that lives in my car. But after 6 months of hating myself for the first 6 months of living in my car, and then finally the last 6 months, I fell in love with myself, and I really appreciated what I'd done, and I tried and I failed, and the lessons I learned, I had the opportunity to check those boxes. I realized there's something about being the guy that can say, I just don't know, when you really do know, and you can kind of sneak under the radar, and then you have this big surprise, like, where the hell did you come from? Like, well, I was just kind of listening and acting dumb in the room, and I was learning, and you kept giving me more information, and I was learning what you really needed and what I could do to make your life better. And I was picking brains, and I was putting my puzzle together. And then all of a sudden, while you were laying low and driving around in your fancy Ferrari, I was just doing this. And then, by the way, we just won, and you didn't know we were even practicing.
Didn't even know, man.
I try to stay away from some of those look at me pieces, so I don't attract the wrong people for the wrong reasons that are borrowing or you're having to be mean to, right?
Yes.
It's just like, look, man, I'm just a dude,
Makes
Sorry.
sense, man. Makes sense. I think that's another great comment, and another great piece of advice for anybody listening out there. All right. So first off, this has been great, Jerry. I've loved this. We're going to keep going. Okay. I want to keep going. I want to keep going.
Let's roll. You got all the time you need.
Yeah. Let's keep going, because I want to talk about your company today. Okay. Now you brought in the Murphy Ladder deal, which was pretty,
That was awesome.
right? Talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, first and foremost, when someone tells you that business sucks, and here's why, listen, right? It's a great business. And what was fun about this one is, like, working in the fire world, there was these stick ladders that we used in the truck. So they're long, skinny ladders that kind of just folded into themselves. But they're a dang nightmare to get up a set of stairs. Like, you're trying to go around with a 14-foot stick, and you're like, crap, I can't even make the bend. And I'm like, these ladders would be awesome if you could just fold them in half and carry them like a regular little piece of luggage, and they're this big, and I could get anywhere with them and fold them up and get in the attic. So they're called attic ladders in the fire world. But I said, well, look, we could make these really awesome. I'll make non-mirroring feet, and let's see if it'll work. So we put a couple pieces of metal together, riveted some, rungs on it. It's kind of nice when you have a factory, right? You can go out and weld,
do some things.
Stuff. So we went in there and we shut it, we folded it, and then it folded in half again. We're like, what the heck? It worked? Like we had no idea. Well, so then we decided, well, let's get a 3D rendering done of it, or a 3D printed version, and we'll go get that and see if we can get Depot in on this. And by the way, just to preface it, I was already selling a Depot with the doors, so I already have some doors. I have an easy access into the the merchants and so forth.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it shortened that ladder a lot. And again, I'm not trying to advocate for big box. There's better ways. D2C is the future, period. I don't care what big box says in Home Depot. They already know how I feel. I keep telling them my goal is to have 0 Home Depots, right? They're like, we want you in 2000. I'm like, well, that's great because I want 0. So we're in a weird spot, right? But anyhow, I put it together. We went in, 3D printed it. It showed up to Depot. He said, hey, here it is. Folded it. And they're like, okay, we got to have it. And then they try to beat you up. And then you have to deal with their associate merchant and senior merchant and all these different levels of, yes, they get you excited early. Like, oh, it's the best thing. We're going to buy $1 billion worth. And then the next guy's like, I think Joe's retarded. We're only going to do 100 million worth. And then the next guy's like, I think he's even dumber. We might just do 1 million. So, but you're already spending the money in your head. Like, oh man, I'm rich. Can you believe it?
Right.
Well, we were able to get that product. It was the fastest product ever launched by Home Depot. So from a 3D version and conceptual ladder to 100% full store rollout, that's 1,986 stores, was 9 months.
Whoa.
Now, keep in mind, we did OSHA, ANSI, all the approvals.
Everything.
We did all of that. Packaging, boxing, manufacturing overseas, had it already delivered and on the floor pre-20. Meeting was in April. And in January, they were sitting in the United States ready for a full national rollout.
Wow.
And COVID hits February, right? So then there was the conundrums. But long story short, they first off said you could never get into it. You got Warner, Gorilla, Little Giant, and Louisville, right? It's an antiquated business. There's not much margin, and it's a super high risk, high liability business. There's not much innovation in ladder. What are you going to do? Well, ta-da, we did it. Now, barring some of the hurdles of COVID, the thing now, if you look on HomeDepot.com, it's a top rated ladder, right? So anyhow, that was a really interesting thing. And it was as simple as a ladder. Everybody has a ladder. What can you do to a ladder? Well, how about just make it easy to move? Something as dumb as that. It's like Little Giant did a beautiful thing. And by the way, bravo to the Wing family. Those guys are great competitors and they helped me through it. Secrets to this game, doing a ladder product like this. How did you get through all that stuff? Well, who was the chair of ANSI? Okay, well, guess what? He's obviously an engineer. So I'm going to hire the chair of ANSI to engineer my product. So when they go to approve it, then they don't have any feedback because he's the one that did it. He's the one that's the approval.
Smart
guy.
Smart.
What's more expensive? 100% more expensive. But do you want to be thick or do you want to be lean and skinny and narrow so it just goes right down the path? Well, I'll do narrow. It's a little more money, but is it really? It's probably less money. It just looks more money on the front. So we got him in. We got all the approvals done. I tied up with the Wing family. They lined me up with their manufacturers because they're friendly, and we got it all in. So it was a really, really crazy deal. So our first year in business, we did 12 million, right, in that ladder business. So the unfortunate thing is margins, right? You're talking about a $150 deal. Tariffs hit at 27%. Freight hits during COVID went up 400%. You have aluminum that went up 40%.
Yeah,
so
that's
it
right.
really went down to
really rough time with
especially for ladders.
Yes,
that aluminum got blasted.
Yeah, it did.
Trump tariffs hurt.
It did too.
So not anything bad about Trump. It's just it was my category that I was in. It's just that's what it was. So anyway, it was fun. But I'll tell you what's fun is when everyone's saying you're going to lose at this game. And then all of a sudden, oh, you'll never be out for the new ladder reset. And by the way, they do resets every 3 years. So if you don't get on this reset in January, you're going to be 3 years down the road for another reset. I'm like, oh, I'll get in January. Like, you're smoking crack. Do you know how long it takes to get through Depot? That's a 15-month minimum. I'm like, I'll be done. It'll be ready. I'll have it there. It'll be on your porch. So we did it.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
It was a fun one. We had Harmon Brothers do the ladder luchador. For those of you that want to watch a funny commercial, the Murphy ladder luchador commercial's a hoot. I got an awesome tally back here. The winged angel, like on the commercials. It's just kind of fun. We've had this crazy deal. Like you said, Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies. We got 5 years straight, and then we got.
Let's talk about though, because we're coming close on time, but I'm loving this, by the way. let's talk about what you're doing right now, because we talked about some of the stuff, growing your company. You got a big meeting coming up. Okay.
Yes, Thursday.
And yeah,
Well, Friday, I should say.
right.
My team flies in Thursday.
Right. I mean, you're bringing everybody. You're doing a launch. You're talking about budget. You're doing the whole gig. But talk to me today about some of the things you're doing to elevate the sales performance of your organization and even the operational performance of your organization right now.
Man, that's a lot to unpack. But I'm going to tell you what I don't know. There's a recognition, I think, as you get older, Dave. You've been super successful in your world as well, and you realize as you get older more and more what you don't know, and it's almost like this unleash of like freedom. You're like, oh my gosh, I can say I don't know. I want it tattooed on my forehead. Like there is so much I don't know that people, they look at you right now going, man, you got your names on buildings, you got your name everywhere, Entrepreneur of the Year, finalist, like what the more, you know everything. I'm like, crap, are you kidding me? I know like this much of nothing. I'm so far from knowledgeable. So to tell you what I did, knowing what I don't know, what am I terrible at? I am terrible. Here's the first thing I did not like about business. I need your business plan. I'm like, yeah, you got it. I don't want to fail. I want to be profitable. And I hope everybody knows my brand. Deal? Like, I don't know how else to do it. They're like, okay, how are you going to get there? I'm like, hard work and sales. Like, what does it look like? So business plans made no sense to me up until probably last week. I mean, let's be honest. I don't know. I still don't quite understand it, but I do in a sense. So I have the awesome opportunity to work with a gentleman named Randy Watt. He was the old Ogden City police chief.
Okay.
We've worked in the career field, the battlefield police, fire, EMS here locally. And he's also a colonel. He was a Army Green Beret. He's an amazing man. You see him on KSL on Memorial Day, right? And Veterans Day.
Yeah.
So I teamed up with him and I'm like, hey man, I need some consulting on like, what is a goal or what is a mission? Like you guys have a mission. Like he was one of the 17 people designing the anti-terrorism campaign against the Middle East for the United States military. So he has some data.
Yeah.
He's like, let me show you how a mission works. Like, what is the goal? The goal is to stop terrorism in the United States. And then he drew this. I have this awesome natural table that has glass all over it. And he drew truly the battle mission and goal. End goal, and no terrorists. United States. Here we are today. Here's where we want to be.
A to Z, man. Yep.
And then he just went through, he's like, what are the dates? What are the missions? Like all the way down to like, how do we get there? How many socks does every militant need or, Army person need? How many freaking meals? How many of this? I'm like, holy crap. I never thought about the deal. And then he says, now let's spin this into your world. I'm like, so where do you see Murphy Door? I'm like, big. Well, where? I'm like, over there. He's like, okay. He's like, well, here's what you're saying, Jeremy. He goes, we're going to go to New York. You're in Salt Lake. Go. And you're like, all right. He goes, so you're not giving maps, you're not giving plans, you're not giving any of that. When truly you can say, hey, you're going to go to New York. I want you to take freaking 80, and you're going to go straight to 80 till you get to 17. You're going to stop at this hotel, at this exit, this gas station, this mill. This is where it's going to be. And you're going to land on this day. He goes, or if you say, hey, we're going to go win, go, and then nobody knows where they're going. So he goes, let's decide what it looks like. So what you're talking about on Friday is we've called it Mission 27. So our goal that we will achieve is $109 million in 2027 for Murphy Door, which is a pretty big run, right? How do you get there? Well, we sat down and we strategized this big run. What is it going to look like? Where's the cash pinches? What is it going to take? What categories and markets do we have to grow in? What are each one of these items we do? And then break that all out. Well, the irony inside this deal is I had the opportunity in December. We'd been working on this mission that, by the way, like 3 months prior. I was in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I had the opportunity to run into Grant Cardone, and I had a Murphy Door hat on. I'm not, this is sport my buddy's brand. So anyhow, but my Murphy Door hat's a metal plate on the front, and it has an American flag. And I believe he thought it was a 10X flag that was one of his hats. He goes, hey, some hat. He goes, wait, Murphy Door, I've got 2 of those and no hats. I go, you got 2 what? He goes, 2 Murphy Doors and I don't have a hat. I go, let me get you a hat. He goes, I'm just shitting you, man. And then he walks away. Well, Jared comes back. He's like, hey, no, what's your number? Let me give you I'm like, all right. He does want one. Well, I get a text a little while later. He says, hey, come have a couple drinks with us up on the top of the Phoenician. I'm like, random. Okay. So I thought it was like a big gathering. Well, I get up there and there's Brandon Dawson. So he wrote 9-Figure Mindset. And then I had Grant Cardone, Jared Glant, and then the guy that owns Del Mar Racetrack and whatever. So I'm like, I get to the door and there's this big security dude, and he's still Grant's security guy, big muscly black guy. I'm like, oh shit. So he goes, what can I help you with? I'm like, I don't know. I got this text. And I didn't know who Jared Glant was. He's the president of all of Cardone Companies. And he goes, oh, that's Jared. Come in. So we had this opportunity to kind of go back and forth. And I was telling him, he told me how terrible I was at sales and how bad I was, because he's bought a couple things. He didn't even know we offered half the stuff we offered. And he'd never had a follow-up call and tried to upsell him or nothing. I'm like, yeah, we don't have an outbound sales team. So I want you to know we've got here to where we're at today, and we've had zero salesmen until
Unbelievable.
90 days ago. And he's like, okay, well, that explains why you don't have any call outs. And what's your traffic? I'm like, we have 500 million views a year online. We have 7 million website visitors a year. We have about an average of 1,670 leads a day come in every day.
Unbelievable.
That
You can't fathom this, like the amount of activity you got going on.
Well, Brett Keller, the owner of Priceline, he's like, dude, do you realize you're already at 109 million? You're already at 300 million. You're already at $1 billion if you can just close your deal. We convert on our website at 0.24%, which is extremely poor conversions.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Extremely poor. So if we could just move it to 0.7, we're already at 100 million anyway, right? And then on top of that, all the phone calls that we aren't able to reach out on. So needless to say, I did hire Brandon Dawson and Grant Cardone under their Cardone Ventures 10X platform. And we've been working with them twice a month, flying down, doing classes, and they've put my company all together in a package. And I'm going to reach over the screen really fast just to give you an idea of how big this is. But this is the packet for our Vision 2027, right?
And this is the meeting coming up, right?
This is tomorrow, or this is Friday, and this goes through all the data, every financial forecast, cities, products, all of it. This is what we've been working on. So this packet's 366 pages that we've put together on how detailed this plan is. So what you can say, hey, you have a goal of 109 million, but what does it look like? I paid the Cardone Ventures Group $500,000 to work with me and every team member on my team to get to withdraw data, right? And now we've got it in there to get reality inside this book in every segment of my business. And then working with the militant guy, Randy Watt, to help us put together the execution of it.
I love it.
Right?
I love that. Love
KPIs, metrics. So when I say, hey, is it a goal? Yeah, it is a goal. Is it something we're going to hit 110%? Why? Because there's action plans tied behind it. There's accountability tied behind it. And there's daily steps that we have to do every single day. And then people have to be accountable to those steps. And as long as we're hitting those metrics within reason of 80%, we don't have to say 100%. As long as they get 80%, we will hit our number.
That's unbelievable.
Right?
Listen, I want to go into this, okay? Because and we're going to close up here, but this has been, again, fantastic. So there's two things that I've really taken from this podcast that I want everyone to really pay attention to. One is when you're doing the right things and you have a vision in mind, the universe will transpire with you. You talked about having this neighbor, or you ran into this guy, or you connected with this guy, or Grant Cardone runs into you and says, "Where's my hat?" Like,
right.
When you have a true belief and a true work ethic and a true vision and integrity and all those things we talked about earlier, the universe just it conspires with you to make it work. And I think that's a huge deal. And for someone who out there who like doesn't have the opportunity to go to Grant Cardone or spend that kind of money, you've really labeled it. You ripped apart the data, you understood the data, you put it back together with an action plan, and now your next step is to execute on that. And that's it sounds so easy, but it's not. But those three fundamentals: understand your business. I always say understand the DNA. Once you understand the DNA, you work on the CBA and the NBA, which is your current business acquisitions and your new business acquisitions, and how do you deliver on that? And it's a simple philosophy, but more importantly, it really aligns with what you're talking about. And I'm excited as hell for you, man.
I'm excited too. And I want to give Grant Cardone and Brandon Dawson. I love those two. We've got to be close friends. Jared Glant and I are great buddies now. We talk all the time. Let me tell you this. I did my first $30 million in real estate. That's another thing I do in commercial.
That's right.
Real estate. I made $30 million off of a deal learning from Grant Cardone in real estate on YouTube for free. And Brandon Dawson and Grant Cardone offer all this data for free. You don't have to sign up for the class. These guys are so Do they make a lot of money? Do people hate them? Sure. But guess what? If you just want to listen and you can have your choice of political view or whatever, they are giving their information for nothing on YouTube and on Instagram. And you can dissect what works for you. And I'm not cheerleading them,
Yeah.
but people like Alex Hormozy, Brandon Dawson,
Yes.
John C.
Yeah.
Maxwell, Grant Cardone, like you name the groups of people. And if you want to sit down and spend the time rather than playing your Nintendo games, that's how out of date I am.
Or
I don't have
social media.
yeah, whatever. Do some time and listen and look at what can really work and just learn. Like I had no idea, truly did not know how to set a goal, Dave. I had no idea. What's your goal? Win. What does that look like? I don't know. But so I had to define what is 27. And I can say how hard it was to say, what is the defined goal and why is it 109 million, Dave? It's because that is what we could put together within reason at an 80% deliverable on an executable plan. I didn't say we're going to go to 109 million without a map. I said, hey, what is this at an 80% deliverable? If we were able to perform all the way down these channels at 80%, what does that dictate? And it was declared at an 80% deliverable of our action plan, we would land at that number. So we declared that the finish flag. That's the number for 2027. And 2034 is 1,084,000,000. Right? So that's a 10-year goal. And can it happen? 100%. And by the way, that is only in the US. That doesn't include Bauhaus Europe. That doesn't include Japan. Some of the groups we're already working in. So it's just like, what if we executed it a smart way? The internet is awesome if used properly. There is free information. There's great people like you that are doing awesome podcasts. They're sharing this information to help people win. Like just spend the time in the right places. We can start scrolling that TikTok thing and end up in some rabbit hole, which I'm guilty of. Right? Like, oh, there is a flat Earth for sure that we never landed on the moon. 100%. I haven't slept in 3 days.
Been there.
You know what I mean? But if we spend it in the time where we really truly have our heart, which is for our family, which is trying to create wealth, really money is just for fun, right? Let's be honest. That shouldn't be the end goal. The ability to accomplish your objective of whatever your vision of your life should look like is that. But if money does come and you can create a comfortable space for your family during now our children, and then what if we did a really good job and created enough comfort for our children, to raise their children, but we did an excellent job to where they can help their children and their children, and then also help the community at a huge level, whether it be with jobs or donations or whatever we need to stabilize. But it isn't really my goal. And people, even my wife doesn't believe me. When's enough? I'm like, I don't care about money. Why? How much more do I have to tell you? It's not that.
Yeah.
I look at these 100 people that work here and I'm like, look, they have brand new cars in the parking lot. They have new shoes. Their kids are in freaking dance and they're in baseball and softball and whatever. Like, this is really what I want to see. I get giddy when I see a parking lot with new cars in it and people wearing good, clean clothes and nice and respectful and are happy. And we don't have high turnover. Our attrition is almost non-existent. Like, it is not something that we're concerned with. And that's where I feel like I define success. It has nothing to do with what does my checking account look like personally.
It's fantastic.
My emotional one that matters. If that overflows, then truly I'm a happy camper.
What a great way to close this out. Listen, we're going to do it again.
I hope so.
We're
I love
it. This has been a blast for me.
I love it. It's great.
This is going to be a great show. Where can people find you if they want to reach out, ask you questions? Where can they connect with you?
So I'm going to do a shameless plug. I also have a little podcast called 90 Proof Wisdom It's 90 Proof Wisdom. It's Spotify, Apple, all those. The other one directly on LinkedIn. I do respond as long as you're not trying to sell me stuff out the gate. Hey, sell me, but don't say, hey, I'm Dave. I want you to buy this.
Right.
I think that's how we met, Dave. I'm happy to respond.
Absolutely.
If you want to bring value, and I'm not saying that you have to bring me something, or if you're just asking questions, man, I am here to help. I love nothing more. I think we talked about that in Tide the other day, right?
Yeah, totally.
I look at trying to give 10% away of my time to people that are having an objective and a goal that are clearly defined and have the right spirit in their heart. I want to help you. I truly do. So reach out to that, or you can reach out to me on email, and it's just jeremy@murphydoor.com.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
So values first, please. Don't come out the gate with the sales pitch.
That's it, man. We got to be helping people. That's where we are right now, and that's what it's about. So listen,
if you feel like you can help me, I'm good with that too, right? Like,
right.
I need help.
Listen, we're going to stay in touch, man. I'm really excited about your future and staying in touch with you and building this relationship. But realistically, thanks for being on the show. This has been such a great show, and I think our listeners are going to get so much out of it. And thanks again for being here. So he's Jeremy Barker. I am Dave Slyman, your host. Check us out. Like this show. Share the show. I know there's going to be a lot of activity on this one. And Jeremy, I appreciate you being on the show, man.
Dude, thank you so much for thinking of me. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor. Can't wait to do lunch.
Yeah. We're going to do that too. We're going to do that too. For sure.
Too close to not, right?
Yep. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Check us out. Wealth, health, success to all of you.
The Sales Proformance Show.